The film really came about through a friend of mine, Michelle DaCosta, who I'd worked with on a couple of films before. She wanted to do a sort of bio story about Tupac, and for her it was a very personal story. And I wasn't originally going to get involved. And then one day I picked up the LA Times, and there was this story about Russell Poole, the police detective who was investigating the Biggie murder, who was resigning because he was unable to investigate fellow police officers. And we then became very close to Russell Poole, and became, that was really the way into making this film. It was Russell who gave us all the sort of background information and things that was his research, his police research on the case, and that really filled the story out and was invaluable in actually making the film. These are all police photos that were taken on the night of Biggie's killing. This photo we got from someone called Matthew Pearson, and it was almost impossible to track down because Matthew Pearson died of AIDS a couple of years after doing this, and his mother was so upset. She's never really uses negatives for anything, and we couldn't actually get the original negative, so we had to get this out of one of the magazines. And this footage of Tupac and Biggie was the only footage we could find of them together we could actually license. It's really, really rare footage because, neither of them were that well known at that time. And we got it from someone called Gerald Barkley, who I don't even know that he knew he'd shot it. We just found it on the edge of frame, and we slow-moed it. We were like amazed when we actually found the two of them hugging together. So it was like an incredible discovery, almost, as great as some of the things we made in making the film. And this is some footage of Biggie and Puffy playing together. I think it was one of the first things they did, and I just thought it was amazing because just watching Biggie holding the glass all the way through it, and we cut some of the stuff out that Puffy did. There he goes. But I just think Biggie was so, he's so amazing in this piece.
But the friendship changed. There were accusations of treachery and betrayal. Tupac accused Biggie of trying to have him killed. Tupac claimed to be having an affair with Biggie's wife. Their murders were explained as being the result of a feud that had grown up between them. But it was this explanation that got us interested.
Tonight, shocking allegations against the city's top cop. Former Detective Russell Poole has filed suit against the department. Poole says he uncovered dirty...
It was actually incredibly hard getting hold of Russell Poole at the beginning. Russell, never wanted any money or any payment for this. This was, his passionate belief that these police officers were involved, but his lawyer didn't want him to talk to us. So, we had this terrible time of trying to get Russell involved in making the film, and he wasn't allowed to talk to us. We would meet him in various bars and talk to him, and he used to always hang out in Denny's, and we'd have all those meals there with him and talk about the case, and he'd bring things along. And at first it looked like we were going to just have to digitize, use him like a sort of deep throat character that would be off screen, and maybe we'd sort of digitize something in as a sort of character that was leading us through the story. This was the first thing we were able to film with him, going into his lawyer's office, and it was basically just to get his statement that he couldn't take part in the film. And we were like, it took months and months of work to actually get Russell to defy his lawyer and start working on the film with us.
Due to ongoing litigation, I cannot make a statement to you.
So I hope we will return for a longer statement on the whole Biggie Smalls killing and Tupac scandal.
Cut!
Okay. Cut? Is that it?
I had no idea at this stage how many more meals at Denny's we'd have to eat before we finally got Russell's interview.
We actually started filming in Baltimore, mainly because that was where Michelle DaCosta had done most of her work on researching Tupac. Tupac grew up in this area, and Michelle had spent months and months there. So, you know, without Michelle, it would have really been impossible to have made the film. She knew a lot of Tupac's friends, and
constantly moving from place to place.
you know, they were incredibly helpful, and I really didn't know anything much about the subject at all. So this was sort of my introduction to the whole subject. This was some footage we got from one of Tupac's best friends, Gobi. Gobi was with Tupac when he was shot in Las Vegas. And Gobi was going to do his own film on Tupac. He's got massive, amazing footage. So I hope he'll do it one day. He got really intimate footage of Tupac, you know, just goofing around, playing around. And that's why I thought his footage was so special, because it wasn't like Tupac doing a public performance. It was just him mucking around with his friends. And Gobi's a really talented filmmaker, and I, you know, think he could do a great film of his own.
This is Michael, one of Tupac's friends. Hi. We'd heard film crews.
This was actually the first interview we did in Baltimore. Michael, you know, knew Tupac from way back, and they'd all sort of rapped together. It was totally freezing that day. You got no idea how cold it was, and you know, Michael had this footage that he was trying to sell of Tupac, but you know, he didn't really know if he owned it or didn't own it, and the interview was constantly being interrupted by the police. The police were like a really heavy presence in this area. There was a lot of drug dealing going on, and I guess, you know, a lot of guys are being shot and so on in that area, and we were constantly being followed, and sort of, it was a bit of an eye-opener for me.
Controls his music and has refused to license it to us. So we were interested to see what Michael had.
So the police are always everywhere around here.
Oh yeah.
This was actually at the back of Tupac's house. There was a playground where everyone used to hang out, and which I think was a lot better now than when Tupac had lived there. When Tupac grew up in this area, all the younger kids were being killed by the older gang members, because there was this sort of, you know, a lot of drug sales going on right in this playground here. I guess it was at the height of the sort of crack epidemic in Baltimore.
Do you think we could just make a copy or something? Because I'm getting terrible noise.
Can't really make no copy.
No
Listen to it, yeah.
Anyway, we really like Michael. Michael actually works as a electrician. He'd probably hate me for saying this, but that's what he does when he's not working, doing rap music and stuff. And
How much do you think you would want?
he'd sort of lost touch with Tupac when Tupac had gone to Hollywood, and you know, really guarded these tapes that he had of what they'd done together sort of really closely, and I don't know that he really wanted to sell them anyway. And this is the Baltimore School of the Arts where Tupac went as a student. It was like this amazing place where, you know, mainly very talented middle-class kids had gone. It's in this old hotel in the middle of Baltimore. You know, Baltimore at one point was the place where all the embassies were. It was the place, you know, it was before Washington got developed, and they were in this incredible hotel. And Donald Hickam was like his surrogate father. They had incredible close relationship. You know, Donald totally believed in Tupac, and I think was a bit disappointed that Tupac didn't do other kind of roles when he left school, that he didn't do more classical Shakespeare and other things, because he felt he had that kind of talent.
What, the smile usually?
The smile, I said, yeah. He had a fantastic smile, lit up his whole face, beautiful eyes, and when he fastened them on you, whatever was in those eyes, that was where you went.
Donald said Tupac easily had the range to do Shakespeare. Here he is doing one of his favorite characters, Scarface.
This was actually footage taken by Tupac's stepbrother, Mo Preem, who toured with Tupac, you know, for about 2 or 3 years, and he just shot a whole lot of stuff when they were on the road together. And again, this was shot in a motel room somewhere. I just think it's really funny.
What's your name? Huh? What's your name, man?
Cameraman, dude.
Cameraman?
That's right.
You wanna talk? Huh? You wanna work for me?
Yeah, man.
Huh? Okay, you come down tomorrow and talk to man. You got a job, man.
You got a job, man.
Anyway, back.
One of the hardest things actually was finding Tupac's biological father, and it took a while finding Billy Garland, and I think he'd just been around at the beginning of Tupac's life, and then had really lost touch, and then they had a sort of there'd been a big fight between him and Afeni to prove whether he was a biological father or not.
I asked Billy when he'd lost touch with Tupac.
76, 77.
How old was he then?
He was about 6'5". He was born in 71.
And then he went off, what, to California?
He went to Baltimore. He went to California. He moved around New York several times. And so...
why did they move so often?
Well, she was on crack. She was on drugs. She did drugs at the time. And one time he was living in shelters. So Pac really had a bad life.
So how long was Afeni on crack?
Oh, I don't know.
There was a lot of other footage that of Tupac we really liked that we wanted to license. There was some amazing footage shot of Tupac when he was in prison talking about Afeni, who he actually was devoted to, his mum. But we weren't able to license it. People were really frightened that, I think mainly that Afeni was going to come after them if they licensed their footage to us. Because she's doing her own film or something. So it was difficult. I would have liked to have had more footage of Tupac in the film that I have than we got actually.
This is a picture of Tupac and Afeni taken on Mother's Day. Whatever problems there might have been, Tupac was very loyal to her. Billy himself re-established relations with Tupac in 1994 after he heard over the radio about Tupac being shot. This shooting was not fatal. It happened 2 years before he was killed in Las Vegas, and it was for this attack that Tupac blamed Biggie.
He was shot in various spots all over his body, growing arm. But they had said that he had his testicles shot up. And the first time I went to visit him after that, he made it a point to show me that he did not have his testicles shot off. And then he went like that, and of course, I knew he was my son.
Billy Garland now has a second family, and he's married. He has a white wife, and they live in just outside New York. And I guess he's moved on with his life. I think the whole what happened with Tupac and stuff was very painful for him too, and I think he went through a really hard time, like Afeni with the disillusionment with the Black Panther movement when it got smashed up and stuff. So it was actually quite a sort of difficult interview. I think it was quite painful for him talking about it all.
Had it been just your ordinary drive-by shooting by some unexperienced gangbangers, we would have solved it a long time ago. You got to think to yourself, well, who could do this and get away with it? Cops. If there are cops on our force that are willing to do stuff like this, you have to look at them.
This is like coming to the area of Brooklyn where Biggie lived, in Clinton Hill. It's actually a great area and had amazing kind of West African fish restaurants everywhere, and the incredible sense of neighborhood. It was actually really freezing when we were there, and I noticed everyone kind of going in and out of this laundrette. There was like a washateria laundrette, and that's where everyone was doing all the dope deals and stuff, because it was the one place that was really warm. But it's actually a great area, and everyone knows each other. There was a street corner store, and so when Biggie died, for example, the whole neighborhood, everyone just came out, and he was really well known. He was a neighborhood guy, and really loved, and Miss Wallace, it was a really sort of respected member of the community too. So when we went filming there, we were still trying to get hold of Miss Wallace. We hadn't managed to get hold of her, and I realized everything we did was sort of funneled back to her, so she knew who we'd talked to or what we were doing and so on. So I think, Biggie had the benefit of a much more kind of rooted background than Tupac, and had lots and lots of friends there.
Excuse me.
We were just doing a film in the area, and we were wondering if you knew Biggie Smalls at all. Yeah. What about you?
Valletta was told about this barber shop thing, and she was really laughing about it. She said, you know, I think she kind of liked us for doing that because it was so stupid, and she knew everyone in this market here too. You know, they were all old friends, and you know, just walking in there sort of really disrupted things in the supermarket. So I think that's probably why, in the end, she decided to talk to us, partly because we were making such chaos in the neighborhood.
Yeah, back in bag.
Was he a good?
He was a good
bag
brother.
packer?
He was a good kid. He was a good kid. You know, he wasn't a bully and all like this.
It's Ibrahim's father, and Abraham's father, Ibrahim, who actually owns Wadi, who owns this the store, the Met store, and it was kind of like you know, there was a great atmosphere in the store, and you know, people come in there. If they didn't have enough money, they'd get credit, and you know, he'd help people. There was a real neighborhood feeling in the store. Everyone would come there for everything. If they had a problem, you know, Ibrahim would try and sort it out for them, for people. And this is some really early footage that someone called Mr. C did, who was really important in actually, you know, getting, I think it was Mr. C who actually introduced Biggie to Puffy, and did the contract with him. He was like Biggie's first agent, and he just sort of, in a way, I suppose, discovered Biggie, and he shot this footage, which is really great.
Biggie went to private school. He was the apple of his mother's eye. Biggie was the one on the street with all the Nintendo games. He was protected from the rougher side.
Yeah, apparently Biggie was like an A-stream student, and you know, but he didn't want to stay at school, so he left early. And I think you know, Valletta was a school teacher, so I don't know how that went down, but apparently he, you know, did really, really well at school.
Let me do this presentation.
Puff is on the microphone.
Can everybody here make some noise for B.I.G. for bringing it back to the East?
Chico and Biggie were like brothers.
See, to me, he used to like write rhymes.
Chico was really funny, and he came visited us, I remember, with 2 or 3 of his buddies at the Mayflower Hotel in New York. And the security was really, really uptight there. And we were sitting in the bar, and they had like a full security alert, and they were like guys with, you know, those sort of walkie-talkie sets walking past us every 10 seconds. So they were going to smash up the bar or something. And you know, one really got a sense of what it was like for them. Not, you know, once they go to their neighborhoods and stuff, people were so jumpy around them, and you know, the hotel was like, who are they? And, you know, just really gave them an incredibly hard time.
We went to see Biggie's mum, who lives on this private estate.
And this is where Biggie moved to when he left Clinton Hill. He came here, and apparently, you know, he was really quiet, so there was an underground garage with a lift going up to the apartment. People didn't even know he lived there at all. But this was the apartment where the FBI had him under surveillance. So, you know, when they had lots of photographs of Biggie taken in here, in this apartment. So you just wonder how long they were actually following him.
To tell you, I write what I see, and I write and rap about what I hear. People's experience, some of them my experience.
Valletta was living here now, and this is where she was running the Christopher Wallace Foundation from, which is this foundation that sort of puts computers and so on in the schools in the Clinton Hill area, and tries to put more money into the schools so that people, you know, would have more of a chance when they leave school.
He was somebody at times you want to kill, you want to strangle, but
I think, you know, Valletta was an incredible inspiration for us in making the film, because she was such a you know, dedicated person. She had, you know, in a way had almost grown from the experience of having her only son killed, and, you know, was determined to use it in a positive way and put something back into the community rather than allowing it just to finish her off. And so we really admired that, and she's sort of just so determined to find out what had really been going on, why you know, these killings had happened, why the LAPD has never come up with any answers. And I think she, you know, had a great effect of sort of really focusing us when we were making the film.
When Biggie sang about his one-room shack and no food on the table.
Oh, well, to me, that's a part of an alter ego. That's the rags to riches person that he wants to sing about. In all my son's life, my son left my home when he was 20, and there was not one single second when I didn't have food on my table. I have a 7.5 room apartment. I heard I live in a shack.
Oh, you said it was a shack?
Yeah, my son said it was his one-room shack.
I asked Valletta about Biggie and Tupac's friendship. She blamed its breakup on a dispute between Suge Knight at Death Row Records and Puffy Coombs at Bad Boy Records.
All it was is a Puffy and Suge Knight war. Suge Knight, for some reason, had a friend or a cousin or a nephew got shot down in Atlanta, Georgia. He blamed Puffy and hell break loose. So if that's the case, Puffy, Suge Knight, solve your damn problem. They should have done that.
You know, Valletta and Biggie were very, very close, and you know, he was the only kid, and never really had a father, and you know, they very much shared the same sort of sense of humor, and you know, Valletta's an amazing cook, and you know, Biggie loved nothing more than eating her amazing food, and I think, you know, his death was just the most devastating thing to her, and she was completely determined to try and get to the bottom of it and not get fobbed off by the LAPD, who just had sort of decided not to solve the case.
When Suge Knight publicly insulted Puffy and appealed for Biggie to leave Bad Boy and join him at Death Row Records.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
Biggie didn't accept the invitation.
Straight up Brooklyn in the house, representing.
It became East Coast versus West. Even Snoop Dogg got dragged into the dispute.
The East Coast don't love Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. The East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Death Row. Y'all don't love us. Y'all don't love us. Well, let it be known then. We know y'all East Coast. We know we at East Coast of
I'm the executive producer that a comment was made about a little bit earlier. But check this out. Contrary to what other people may feel, I would like to say that I'm very proud of Dr. Dre, of Death Row, and Suge Knight for their accomplishments. You know what I'm saying? I'm a positive black man, and I make music to bring us together, not to separate us, and all this East and West that need to stop.
The Tupac Biggie dispute really got going.
Everyone said that, you know, Tupac changed enormously once he joined Death Row, and you know, all his friends from Baltimore said that he went through a really big change, and you know, he became very isolated from them. They couldn't get in touch with him, and you know, Suge Knight was not keen on him Tupac having other friendships sort of outside Death Row and the Death Row entourage. And there's also, in some of the additional footage, there's stuff with some friends of his, like John, who was white, who came to California to meet him, and there were lots of problems. And I think, you know, Tupac had sort of, you know, in a sense redefined himself, or, you know, became very, you know, involved in the sort of, you know, West Coast Mob Piru sort of gangster image, and you know, was also working so hard. You know, people just said he was just different, became very very interested in guns. You know, had this massive gun collection and stuff, which just had just sort of changed to that extent. This is footage again which we got from Gobi, which I just thought was incredible footage, because you can see what an amazing energy he was, and how driven he was, and the speed at which he needed to create. He would just do so many, do 2 or 3 songs in a day, which is just unbelievable, and he just needed to move at that speed, and could just just sit down at the desk and just write out a whole song without stopping, no crossings out or anything. And this is, when we went and saw Mo Preem, and Mo Preem was a really, amazing guy. He, came from the same father, Mutulu, who's a Black Panther, and, had originally been in the Marines, and then had gone on tour with Mo Preem on the left there, and had gone on tour with Tupac, and they'd spent a lot of time together, and really, really good friends. And but I think whereas Tupac had become very famous, Mo Preem's career hasn't taken off in the same way. There's some additional songs of his that we've included in the DVD. But he very much had that sort of the Black Panther background and so on. I think he was quite suspicious of me, being white and all the rest of it, and sort of we always ended up, Mo Preem was very broke, and I think sometimes for him it was like if he could sell some of the pictures of Tupac, he'd get his car out of the shop. It was in the shop, and so we had quite a strained relationship in a way. I'd say the most strained of pretty much in the film, and it wasn't that I think there was just a separation. It was the one time I was really aware of being, I guess, white and having just a totally different. I think the Black Panther experience was the experience that really was the definitive one in a way. So Mo Preem, I think, also had all the frustrations of being so close to fame and enormous money, and at the same time, at the moment, not really having it. But I just thought he was so talented and so this next thing he says I thought was just so incredible, and it probably came out of me really goading him in a way, or I knew that was something I had to get out of Mo Preem, and so I just asked him all these really irritating questions, and until we got to the situation, then he came out with this, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done that. But
I'm not going to. I'm going to listen to this closely.
This bit here, I just thought was what it was all about, really.
To judge a character of a man, judge how he comes back from hardship. Check me out. Check me out now. Roll it.
This song is written for Mo Preem's family and Tupac. Mo Preem's father, Mutulu, Tupac's stepfather, is a Black Panther serving 60 years in prison.
So I think Mo Preem's doing an album of his own. I don't know what the title is, but this was one of the main songs on it, and a couple of the other songs are on it as well. So it was going to come out sometime last year.
Got you chopping up the game with his Khomeini still war on the outskirts of the law. Kicking in your door with the long 4-4. Motherfuckers ain't guilty, then what are you scared for? All that shit you said that you thought that we would stand for, shit eyes and fled. Left my dog for dead. Riches and names squandered, and now you niggas gonna pay for it. And y'all know it. And the greatest rapper that ever touched the mic, tatted on his belly the words of thug life. It's the return of the outlaw, hands in the air, for my people getting money.
I think for a lot of people, it's a lot of Tupac's friends, it was quite hard, living with the legacy of Tupac and having all that, going through such an incredibly intense period of their lives, and having these few bits and pieces that everyone wants, all their films and all their pictures and all their things. It's kind of, a strange situation in a way.
War against Biggie.
And that's Mo Preem on the left there in the white shirt. He was like quite a sort of moderating influence, I think, on Tupac, when they were touring and stuff together. He really used to sort of look after Tupac.
Have a good summer, B.I.G.
Tupac became obsessed with the idea that Biggie had tried to kill him.
While I'm in jail, strangers is telling me, yo, you don't know? Biggie homeboy shot you. Because they bragging, they telling they in jail. Yo, we just got popped.
Apparently, all this sort of stuff relates back to, the FBI and the fact that, J. Edgar Hoover had this policy, which was called the Black... It was derived from this fear that he had of the Black Messiah, that there was going to be a Black Messiah that would, lead an uprising that would cause the end of the status quo as it is in America at the moment, which is why he followed every sort of influential black figure from Paul Robeson Sr., the singer, to Biggie and Tupac, because there's still this obsession in the States that this is where the problems are going to come from. And what they did with the Black Panther movement was that they split the West Coast from the East. They infiltrated, both sides, and they caused enormous schisms within the Black Panther movement. And there's a lot of belief that the same policy was used in the rap movement here, that there was again a West Coast, East Coast schism that was developed, that was based really very much on what had happened very successfully with the Black Panther movement.
Tupac's mother, Afeni, seen here, was a Black Panther.
And of course it relates back to the fact that obviously a number of, like Tupac's mum was in the Black Panthers and so on, and I think that just made people more worried.
I might just say one other thing that is in the category of family values, and that is this latest...
But I mean, it's on record that, there was a lot of pressure put on Warner Brothers directly from the government about their association with Interscope and rap music, and so you get a sense of how deep it all went. And then there was this special Senate Select Committee that was only looking into hip hop and the influence of hip hop and so on. So I think that's where a lot of all this came from.
Putting out this record because it is constitutional.
We would have liked to have gone into it more in the film, but it's such an enormous subject on its own, really.
It looked like Biggie's and Tupac's friendship was used and destroyed by others. Dan Quayle's outburst caused Time Warner to dump Interscope, its subsidiary that released Tupac, who in turn offloaded Tupac, the troublemaker.
I think actually of all the films I've done, this was the one that had so many different levels, so many different characters, so many different stories, that you could do like a book or a film on each one of them, really. And the hardest thing in editing it was just to, cut everything down small enough so that it all still kind of made sense and there was still a suggestion of it. But the frustrating thing was, in a way, this one couldn't really go into anything as deeply as one wanted to, because they were all so interesting, but they all required so much time. And that's why the editing took so long. It took 6 months to cut this film, which is just, was just so much longer than I normally spent on it.
Out of desperation, meals at Denny's had become $1,000 dinner tickets for Leo's Senate campaign.
This was our last attempt with Russell Poole's lawyer to get Russell to an interview, and we were always, it was just ridiculous. We were always getting stood up, and in the end, Russell's lawyer was running for Senate, so we were donating like $1,000 for his meal tickets in order just to try and ingratiate ourselves slightly and maybe do an interview with him and be able to do this interview with Russell. And it just got ridiculous. And in the end, Russell, I think, who passionately believes in this case, just decided to see us anyway, which, so we actually never got the dinner with Leo, but we did donate to his Senate campaign. And, you know, Russell worked from out here. He was actually running, after he left the LAPD, he worked from these offices here, and he was trying to train people for baseball from these little office. There was a big office in the back where there were all these nets and stuff. And but he was like completely obsessed with the case. And, you know, I don't think really trained people properly, so he was having real financial problems as well. But he never once asked us for any money, which was, you know, which is incredible. I mean, he just really wanted the truth to be out, and you know, could just talk about it all the time. This was, you know, what he really wanted to do, and I think it had caused him problems with his family life and everything, because you know, it was like an obsession and something that he just had to see resolved in some way.
Do you think that there was a connection between the Tupac Shakur killing and the Biggie Smalls killing?
Well, that's basically what it appears to be, a retaliation.
It was really funny actually, because when I went to Sundance, Russell hadn't seen the film at all, and you know, because it's the first time we had a print, and we showed it in front of this enormous audience in there, like sports stadium there. I think there's 1,200 people or so, and you know, I asked Russell to come up and on the stage afterwards and answer some questions. And as he was coming up, I thought, oh my God, I hope he likes the film, because he, you know, I hadn't seen it before. And but fortunately he loved it, you know, and it was really spontaneous. He sort of gave me this enormous hug up there, you know, which was unusual for Russell, because he's quite an unemotional man most of the time. So, and it was also just great having him at Sundance, because, you know, people have been very kind of like, oh, you better watch out, you know, you might get a bullet in your direction, all the rest of it. And Russell really doesn't care, I think. He's just, oh, well, you know, they've known where I am, and if they're going to come and get me, they're going to come and get me, kind of thing. So, yeah, it was really nice having him there too. And I'm looking forward to, you know, spending more time working with him, you know, when the film opens in the States and stuff as well.
A lot of power, and what gave him the power is he had dozens and dozens of police officers working in his organization, okay? He also had a DA that was working on his
Who is that?
matters, a gentleman by the name of Larry Longo.
Russell believes that Tupac's murder was organized by Suge Knight.
I think one of the things that was really hard in making the film was just trying to get a clear sense of the story, you know, of Russell's theories and how they related to the evidence, and to simplify it enough. Obviously, you know, we were given the murder book, which is like, well, thousands and thousands of pages long, which we read. And as you read through the murder book, you know, there's interviews with every single person who was interviewed by the LAPD and how they were involved and everything. And what you've got to do is try and simplify it down enough so that you don't get caught up in too many details, you know.
That Suge Knight would receive 9 years in prison. 2 hours later, Tupac would be mortally wounded fighting for his life. Russell thinks Suge Knight staged the whole casino incident.
He thought he would be able to beat this casino probation thing. He really did. It just backfired on him. There's nothing he can do for his defense.
See, a lot of these phone calls were, you know, before we got Russell to agree to the interview, I thought what we were going to have to do is use this voice with a kind of like almost computerized image. So you would have this voice off screen, or maybe this weird computer image leading you through the story. And that's why we did lots and lots of these phone interview things. Or, we were even going to maybe change the voice, get, you know, if we ran into legal problems, to get an actor or somebody to do the voice, and then have him as this sort of deep throat character off screen that would, you know, take us through it, which maybe would have worked, I don't know, but it was obviously much better to have got Russell in it.
Tupac's personal bodyguards. He now operates from here in San Pedro. Ex-Officer Hackey works from here as a bounty hunter. He had himself just been released from prison.
We got to we got to hear of Kevin Hackey through Russell Poole. He was he'd just come out of prison himself, and he was actually a great person. He was great fun to interview because he was, really reactive, really intelligent. And for him, I think the interviews were sort of like a game. He loves. I think Kevin Hackey loves playing games, and he's very intelligent and very he's funny, and I think everything for him is this whole thing was about trying to make money for him.
Wasn't a bit of a contradiction?
I think primarily Death Row Records, in a sense, hired individual officers. I mean,
he's scurrilous in a way, and thinks he is as well. So, and he's kind of like the new kind of cop, I think, that you get. He's into it he's into it for the women and the cars and the money and the glamour of being a cop, And so, for me, this was an entirely new idea that, someone would become a cop because they could pull the women more easily, and they'd look sharp in their uniform and look cool in their black sunglasses, and that's Hackey, that's just what he loves.
About 30 seconds ago.
The last time I heard from Hackey, he was trying to buy a big yacht, and he wanted me to make some sort of contribution to it so we could all sail around Long Beach and have a good time out there. I think the other thing he does at the moment, he's like working as a bounty hunter at the moment, and apparently in Long Beach there's a lot of cheating husbands on their wives, so you get a lot of wives coming in there, and they employ Hackey to dish the dirt on their husbands, follow them around and stuff. So I think he's quite proficient at doing that as well.
Okay, do you think Suge Knight orchestrated the hit? Saved by the pager.
Based upon what I've been told.
Anyway, I enjoyed him a lot. He was very nice to hang out with, spend time with, and stuff. And for some reason, he liked us. So, which is the main thing I think with these interviews, is that you get it so that people actually enjoy the occasion of doing these interviews. I think they're often more like conversations, really, than interviews with specific questions and things. You just sort of get into the flow of the conversation and try and get into their humor and the way in which they're thinking, and I think that's how you get the best results. And with Hackey, that was sort of a pleasure.
Do you think the same person was responsible for orchestrating the two?
Yes.
And that person's in Death Row Records?
Yes.
So why do you think Biggie was...
Hackey's actually applied for a special firearms license so that he can carry around firearms at all times, citing Suge Knight as the reason. When Suge Knight was released from prison last August, Hackey applied for the firearms license, saying, he was worried that Suge Knight was going to come after him. So I don't know whether he was successful or not.
Let's make it seem as if Bad Boy Records had something to do with the shooting of Tupac Shakur, which by no means whatsoever was remotely the case.
This is Suge Knight at his death row offices. I wondered if he was the victim of his own gangster posturings, the diamond earrings, the Havana cigar. This is the Suge Knight custom-made electric chair. And then there was the statement Suge Knight made about him and Tupac, seen here minutes before they were shot at. Suge Knight didn't help his credibility by saying he had a bullet stuck in his head, when in fact medical evidence showed he was only scratched by a piece of flying glass.
Let me ask you something. You were hit.
I think that one of the hardest things actually in this film was actually getting hold of this archive footage. And Georgia Blakey, who did it, we were cutting the film in the countryside in England, and she'd have to get on the phone at sort of 6 or 7 o'clock at night. A lot of the people didn't wake up till later, so she'd be on the phone till sort of midnight trying to get the footage, and it took almost as long to get footage like this as it did shooting the film. especially getting footage from Tupac and Biggie's friends, because they had to be convinced that we were doing the right kind of film, and a lot of them, moderately hard to get hold of, or they were recording in recording studios all night and stuff. So that was one of the most frustrating parts, I think, of making the film.
Charges of violent assault, attempted murder, the reports of daily beatings at his offices. After a semi-successful...
Before making the film, I read that book by Ronan Rowe, which I thought was, really good, Have Gun Will Travel. So I knew a certain amount about Suge Knight from that and Death Row. And this map here of the divisions between the mob Pyrus and the Crips is something that I've done more on in another section. In the DVD, there's a section with Reggie Wright Sr., and there's a bit more of an attempt to break down how the divisions between the mobs and the Crips operated. And basically, this area where Reggie's getting into the car here is this is a mob area, but the Crips, or a different section of the mob Pyrus, could just be in the next street. And particularly in the 80s, when under the Ronald Reagan government, a lot of crack cocaine came into Los Angeles, the gangs all became involved in distributing the cocaine, and that's really when a lot of the killings developed, because they were able to afford automatic weapons and Uzis and AK-47s and all the rest of it, and hundreds and hundreds of people got killed. In fact, there's evidence that Harry O, who actually started Death Row Records, and basically was a drug dealer, that's how he got all his money, was involved in the cocaine that was coming over from Nicaragua, which was actually shipped over by the CIA in the when the Contras were fighting there. But that's another whole film as well, which obviously we didn't go into. But I mean, that's sort of, if you really want to understand all this, that's sort of where you have to start, almost. And if you want to understand the development of the gangs, you need to go back to that sort of period of time in the 80s, which was, and look at where all the drugs and stuff came from, to really understand how I think a lot of the stuff is developed. And Reggie Sr. was this amazing guy. He was like totally loved in the neighborhood. He was a chief gangs officer at the time of Tupac's killing, and dealt with hundreds and hundreds of homicides. But somehow just remained an amazing person. He said that out of his generation, there were only 6 males of his age, who weren't dead or in prison. Everyone else had been swallowed up by the gang warfare and stuff. And he said he'd witnessed the genocide of almost a whole generation, and yet he'd somehow remained an amazing person himself. So and one of the great things of making the film was meeting people like him. And we met his family and went into his house and everything. But it was Reggie Jr., his son, who was actually running Death Row Records while Suge Knight was in prison.
This is Tupac at the Milan fashion shows. We're going to see Frank Alexander back left, who was with Tupac when he was murdered. Frank Alexander appeared to be the fall guy. Despite the incident with the Crip at the MGM, Frank was the only bodyguard assigned to Tupac that night. He was unarmed and did not have a radio. When he refused to lie about the incident, Frank received death threats. Frank now lives on this horse ranch.
This is my big old Cadillac, which we were using as a crew car, but kept breaking down, so we changed after a while. But it's a wonderful car to do driving shots from, because it's so heavy, and you have this amazing bonnet in the front of it.
Nick Broomfield.
Oh, hi, Nick. Hi.
So you,
This is the
so
UK
you were,
crew, huh?
Yeah. So you were Tupac's bodyguard?
Yeah.
Frank, a former Mr. Universe, terrified by the death threats, found spiritual peace when he became a born-again Christian. He also got several Rottweilers to back him up. Frank also had this, like, the biggest of the Rottweilers was actually, you can see it right there where he's standing. So, you know, Frank said that dog was completely safe. And I'm, you know, I've been bitten a couple of times by dogs, so, and the dog was really, it was really growling and very uncomfortable to be around. But, you know, he was very security conscious, Frank. He was like, you just got the feeling that he needed to have lots of security around him.
I never mentioned in my book that there was rumors of an inside job because I had been on vacation prior to going back.
This was actually the first interview that I did with Frank, or one of the first interviews I did in the film. And I actually felt I was a bit sort of tough on Frank. We actually went back and did another one with him later, which was more about his being a born-again Christian and what that meant to him, and his sort of more Frank's sort of spiritual view on life. And I think that's in another part of the DVD. Because I think, you know, what was incredible about the story was Biggie and Tupac's death had really affected other people's lives, and it was quite interesting seeing how people had dealt with it. And, you know, Frank had dealt with it by eventually becoming a born-again Christian, but I think, you know, he'd gone through this really difficult period of thinking of killing himself and smoking lots and lots of dope, and I suppose, you know, being the bodyguard on duty and not being able to do anything, or feeling he should have done things, or whatever he went through his head, must have been incredibly difficult. And I guess it's often something people don't think about, you know, because you're just focused on Biggie and Tupac, but I think their deaths had an incredible effect on so many people who were, you know, really close to them as well.
I was told by LAPD and also by Las Vegas.
Frank still works out every day, and every day he goes to the gym with this enormous bottle of water. It's like this gallon jug of water, and it's solid ice at the bottom. And it was so hot out in Orange County that it would be, you know, all of melted by the time he finishes his workout. I think he works out for about 3 or 4 hours a day still. And he, you know, runs his horse ranch at the same time. Frank and Tupac were close. Frank also gave us this video hit shot of Tupac with his niece Lamaika. Tupac called Frank Frankie.
Tell Frankie to call me. Frankie, you call me when she tells you to call me Frankie.
Frank talked a lot about all the fights that Tupac used to get into, and how he was always having to separate Tupac from... He used to get into lots and lots of punch-ups all the time. And, you know, Frank was always the one who would break them up. The horrors of Tupac's murder are at best inconclusive, but there are inconsistencies that beg further questions.
We know who's responsible for this. The problem we have with this case is...
There are a lot of people who still think, you know, Tupac's still alive, and one of the Heidi Fleiss, who I made a previous film about, while she was in prison, there was a friend of hers there called Lizzie, who, you know, a lot of the other women in the prison, you know, Tupac was their complete hero, and there were pictures of him on the walls and stuff, and they were all convinced that he was, you know, alive and living in Cuba. And I was going to go and interview them in prison, but in the end it proved just too difficult to get into the prison to do it.
I was just asked concerning Orlando Anderson to say that Tupac and I had seen him earlier at the MGM when we were over there, and Tupac was gambling, to say that he had snatched off a chain off of Tupac's neck. I was told to say that. I was told to say that the night before Tupac died, which was the 12th.
And in fact, that was inaccurate.
It was it was inaccurate.
Valletta, Biggie's mum, said he was really upset by Tupac's death.
I was more shocked than anything, you know what I'm saying? But I wasn't more shocked of him dying. I was more shocked of him. Pac is a strong dude, yo. I know Duke, you know what I'm saying? Right. He real strong. So when they was like he got shot, I was just more like, again? You know what I'm saying? He always getting shot or shot at. He gonna pull through this one again, make a few records about it, and it's gonna be over, you know what I'm saying? But when he died, I was just like, whoa. You know what I'm saying? It kind of took me by, you know, even though we was going through our drama, I would never wish death on nobody, you know what I'm saying? Because ain't no coming back from that. So it kind of turned me down a little bit. But at the same time, you know, you got to move on. You know, I felt for his moms, for his family or whatever, but, you know, things got to move on, you know?
Here's a bulletin. State Police, Princeton Junction. Hills Militia. Certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under...
Biggie was murdered a week after doing that interview. So what then happened? Once Tupac was murdered, why was Biggie next? Hackey said it was to take attention off death row. Was it aimed against Puffy to take away his most valuable asset? Or was it just that the killing machine was in place and the killing couldn't stop? We went back to Orange County to see ex-detective Russell Poole.
I think another thing that you often don't think about is the kind of difficulties someone like Russell Poole would go through. You know, he was like LAPD police officer. His father had been a sheriff. He was somebody who like really was like your honest cop. And, you know, when he started, you know, insisting that these investigations were done, you know, the department really victimized him, and he was, you know, there were rumors spread about, you know, his personal life and about his incompetence and all the rest of it. So it's a big decision, I think, to decide that you're actually going to stand up against the police department and fight for what you want, because it wrecks your entire life. And, you know, Russell, you know, shortly after doing these interviews, his baseball thing, which you can see the netting of there, went bust. And he ended up, you know, unemployed, not making any money for a while, and then ended up having to pick up bodies, dead bodies, you know, which was, I think, just the worst thing, and it's very, very badly paid. And so he's been through like hell because he did this. And he now has a job, actually, thank goodness, for the marshals, with the marshals department. But I think he really went through a complete nightmare.
That it wasn't the case. When it came to cops being investigated, we weren't serving the public the way we should have served the public.
Biggie was murdered on March the 9th, 97, 6 months after Tupac. He was leaving the Vibe party at the Peterson Motor Museum in Los Angeles. It was a well-orchestrated hit.
You got to ask yourself one question. Why haven't these cases been solved? One reason that they were well orchestrated, well planned out, radios being used, communication, and it had to be experienced people doing this, which would lead you to believe that experienced police officers knew exactly what to do.
Russell suspected police officer David Mack for orchestrating and organizing...
I think the other thing you've got to remember too is, you know, Russell's received, you know, lots of death threats, and, you know, his family had been threatened and all that sort of thing. And, you know, at one point he was thinking he was going to have to leave California because too many people knew where he was living. And you know, I think just the thing of looking at the bottom of your car every day and making sure there isn't a bomb there or that kind of thing is, you know, it gets to you after a while. And I think it has a big psychological toll on people. And also you're ostracized, you're isolated. All the buddies that he had on the force, you know, it was hard for him to spend time with them because they'd get into trouble too. So to be a whistleblower, which is really what Russell is like a massive decision and a very, very lonely and painful decision. And, you know, I really admired him for it enormously.
Took family illness days off just prior to the Biggie Smalls case, which indicates there had to be some planning, and he couldn't be bothered with going to work.
Officers Mac, Perez, and Gaines were part of a bigger police scandal, the Rampart scandal, linking officers throughout...
We're going to go and visit Sonia Flores here, and Sonia Flores was kind of this sort of wonderful, shameless character who, at a certain point in the case, said that Rafael Perez and David Mack were responsible for murdering a couple of people and dumping the bodies down in Mexico. And then there was this like enormous search of a refuse. That's David Mack on the left and Rafael Perez on the right. And she had been lovers of both of them. And that's Sonia there. And she said that these bodies were buried in Mexico in this refuse tip. And, you know, this led to, you know, bulldozers and, you know, hundreds of people going through this refuse tip, and they didn't find anything. And then she said she made it up, which coincided with all these LAPD police officers being Buchanan and people being released, or their cases were all quashed. And it sort of, there were a lot of questions being asked as to whether she was working for them in order to sort of discredit testimony against them that she had made previously and so on. So it was very unsure. One was very unsure about what was going on. But she was very funny, and this is Marshall Biltower, her lawyer, it was one of the more amusing interviews that we did. They were just, Marshall's just a really funny guy, and he has a background of entertainment law. And so he really wanted to do the interview, and, you know, he wanted to know about all the sex acts that Sonia got into with all these various policemen. And she said that she knew like 52 policemen from this particular Rampart division. So the corruption was pretty widespread. But Marshall was into knowing every kind of weird position and everything that gone on. So I let him do most of the interviewing, really, because he was asking questions that I probably didn't dare ask. He was really into finding where all the videos were, whether there were any videos done of these orgies that were done. So I was hoping that he might turn them up. But what was incredible about Sonia was she was just so unrepentant and funny, and you know, had obviously just had a blast doing it, and you know. I'm sure one will hear more of her in the future.
No, that was the other side of Rafael Perez, that I wasn't involved in that. Because I didn't like rap music or that kind of people.
Did he quite like rap? Or?
Yes, he did. A lot.
He never talked about Suge Knight?
No.
Officer Mack was born and grew up in the same area of Compton as Suge Knight. He's also a self-confessed member of the mob Pyrus. Here he is wearing the colors of the...
Both Mack and Perez were outstanding athletes, and they were both highly respected, you know, cops. They were both on these SWAT teams, and you know, were incredibly fit, and I think the gangs were terrified of them. There were a couple of buildings we went to where, you know, they were accused of being responsible for killing a couple of people in the buildings who, you know, had really done nothing. They'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, you know, Perez and Mack were really well known in the Rampart area of Los Angeles, which is the immigrant part where, you know, a lot of people there are illegal immigrants, so they weren't going to do anything about it.
They also met someone called the bookkeeper, who is now himself in jail. It had been very hard to meet the bookkeeper. We were told that he'd been moved to another jail, that he suffered from Tourette syndrome, that he was manically depressed and didn't want to see anyone, and that he feared he'd be killed if he spoke to us. This is Ron Siebold, his lawyer.
This is the massive new jail in the middle of Los Angeles, and it's kind of particularly airless, and it's just this massive new concrete building, no windows, kind of really freaky place in a way. And
7 counts of impersonating a lawyer.
In February of '96.
You just kind of wonder how long you'd stay sane in there yourself. And I think the weird thing that happens in all these prisons is you don't know who to believe after a while, because you hear so many stories and you hear so many different things. And we were never totally able to substantiate what Mark Hyland was saying here. We tried to get hold of the drives from his computer that he was mentioning. We tried to contact some of these lap dancers that he said he had gone on these tours and trips with when he was making these payments and stuff, but we weren't able to substantiate things.
There was a hit taken out on Notorious B.I.G. They were talking about planning on how to get the monies and the weapons together. One of the individuals,
those voices you can hear in the background is there's a continuous noise in these jails and prisons, and you just hear it all the time.
My jaw about dropped, realizing that, there's a lot of booze going around here and a lot of drugs going around, but these guys seem very serious. I mean, they were serious. Subsequently, I got immunity on this, right?
Yeah, federal immunity.
Basically, I then I transported.
Mark, you have federal immunity. This is what we talked about before these people came in.
Right.
You do not have district attorney. You do not have immunity from the state. Okay?
Okay. But I transported monies interstate between Los Angeles and Phoenix to arrange the hit on Biggie Smalls.
And how many times would you say that you met with Suge Knight?
Just a few. A few. I never sat down and I never really knew who he was.
All these guys like Mac and Perez and Hyland, the thing they really had in common was they all went to these lap dancing places. And, that's apparently how they all got to know each other. And they were all involved in, prostitution and that kind of thing. And, but it was very difficult to make any progress trying to investigate anything that way. And he's still in prison, so maybe there'll be some developments in the future.
Guilt. It was wrong. And I didn't want to be involved anymore.
The rap grows bigger. Stay large, keep my workers on the pressure. Try to get the door. Never make mistakes, always come correct. Stepped up to get you rap.
Hacky just informed us he was working as an undercover FBI agent.
And a lot of the time, when you're making these films, you're just sort of driving around in the car, and you have all your mobile phones and stuff, and you're just trying to find anyone, that will move the story on a bit. And then you just, you drive over there immediately and do the interview. We tend never to do any planning ahead because the plans never work out. And sometimes I think, when you're doing these kind of films, you don't really want anyone thinking too long about what's happening and what they're doing. And, my experience, whenever you do long plans, they always, for one reason or another, they all fall through. So we would always be very mobile and, we'd always try and, we used to often visit Hacky, try and get more more stuff out of him. He knew so much stuff. He knew, I think we got very little of it, really. He was always up to something.
Put it to you this way.
Oops.
I've already been offered $250,000. Okay?
$250,000 for what?
These documents. They're actual.
Really?
Yeah.
From who?
Come on now.
What?
Oh, you got that camera.
Hackey always lived in the belief that he was going to be a millionaire one day, and that he was going to have this yacht and, gorgeous women, and he would, be living this wonderful life. So he'd always have stories of different sums of money he'd been offered for this, that, and the other. In the end, he offered me most of the documents for about $3,000 or $4,000, so, which I didn't do. But I also believe that Hackey really does know what happened, and he actually tried to cooperate with the LAPD, who weren't interested in hearing what he had to say.
I would say that'd be a true statement, okay? And there's certain people within the DA's office who've known about these things all along. Now, whether or not someone's actually going to pinpoint that an actual ex-officer killed Biggie, I don't know if they'll ever be able to prove that. But as far as the person who actually did the shooting, as far as I'm concerned, I believe probably within 24 hours or even 2 weeks max, I could have the person in custody, guaranteed who the person is. Okay, and LAPD has known this all along.
And is this the guy that Russell Poole thinks is responsible, Harry Billups?
Jesus. I would say yes on that. Don't ask me why or how do I know this and that. I refuse to answer that, okay? But I would say it's a good guess. It's a good, I'd say 99%.
We shot all this film actually on Super 16, one of those Aton cameras. It was very heavy. It's particularly hard, when you're hand-holding it in these kind of interviews. There was no tripod or anything, but it's, then if someone moves, you're much more mobile to do things. So I'm just surprised that it's this kind of steady, because it's often we'd be in there for like an hour and a half or whatever.
Let me clarify, okay, yeah. In a sense, there's just too many, I guess, in a sense.
It's, obviously much easier on a DV camera, but it's just a different quality at the end of it.
Killing, I mean, there's too many dots that are connecting.
But isn't that a bit vague? I mean, connecting dots, you can't really make an arrest.
I think in an odd way too, when you're shooting in film, you run out every 10 minutes, and it kind of creates a certain slight tension in the interviews because something's always about to run out, and so you kind of tend to push it more. And I've noticed sometimes when I'm interviewing, with a DV camera on tape, the tape's so long that you almost start after a while going to sleep, and you kind of are almost delighted when it runs out, because then you can rethink what you're doing or use a different tact or whatever. And I always use the mag changes to rethink an approach or go back over a point that I think one could go in better.
And who provided the police composite? After many failed attempts to get Little C's, Valletta, Biggie's mum, took over.
This is Miss Wallace. This is Miss Wallace. I'm fine, thank you. Did C's leave us yet? Yeah. Don't you dare park on the other side.
Quite a few of Biggie's friends were, very reluctant to come forward and talk, even though they'd been witnesses immediately after the killing and had signed witness papers and stuff. But then they'd been sort of pressured by other people and told that if they, cooperated with the police and they were involved in investigation and stuff, that they would lose their jobs and so on. And also, I think, the police were quite heavy with the witnesses to begin with. You know, it was most of the police involved were, you know, were white, and they harassed the witnesses, and the witnesses were treated more like suspects than witnesses. So there was a kind of real reluctance on a lot of the part of the people to talk.
To my son, and those are my son's words.
I asked Little C's where he was sitting in the car with Biggie.
Yeah, I was right behind him. He was in the passenger seat, and I was right behind him in the back seat.
Little C's had actually done the original photo kit, or whatever it's called, of the main suspect, because he had actually seen him. He had been sort of sitting right by the window when the shots had come in. So he'd actually got a pretty good look of this guy before he went, you know, duck for cover.
No, this was something that whoever did it, they had to see all that, and they had to plan it, you know.
But getting hold of Little C's was a nightmare. He always carried one of those sort of pager things around, and we would always be paging him, trying to get hold of him. And, you know, we could never, ever get hold of him, and he'd always, you know, we'd always arrange to meet him, and then he'd never show up. And it was only Miss Wallace who finally managed to get him to come around, because she was still, you know, very respected, and, you know, people wanted to do things that they thought would make Biggie happy. So we were really lucky that, you know, she believed in what we were doing and helped us organize some of these interviews.
I tell them that's me. And they asked me, who is that? That's Biggie's best friend, D-Rock. That's him.
So they were showing you.
Little C's was living in a house with Lil' Kim, quite close by. They'd all sort of moved out to this area in New Jersey. They all sort of left Clinton Hill en masse and moved to this area. They'd all been friends of Biggie's sort of way back. And this is the main shopping area, actually, Clinton Hill. We were driving along down here, and suddenly the phone rang. And what I'd done is I'd actually beeped the FBI agent who had made some of the statements about who had been there, you know, at the time of the killing, and had actually taken the photographs that Little C's was talking about. He called me back, and, you know, we just happened to had the camera, and so we filmed it.
Who are you? My name's Nick Broomfield.
I remember my heart was really beating, actually, because I thought, oh my goodness, you know, this is like freaky stuff, really. I thought it was amazing that he admitted he was actually there at the time, because the FBI have always denied that anyone was around at the time of the shooting. And it makes it just so hard to believe that the FBI didn't know what happened. They were there, you know, where you have to ask why nothing happened, you know, why no one was followed, no one was arrested, really, you know, nothing. And also the other thing that was incredible was that there were other cops from Inglewood, the Inglewood area of Los Angeles, who were working off duty for Puffy, who were actually in the vehicle following Biggie at the time. And they were more frightened about getting into trouble themselves for working illegally off duty, so they all ran off. So that there were like 3 or 4 Inglewood cops there who all ran off rather than following the guys who had done the shooting, or the guy who had done the shooting. So it was like a ridiculous situation. So it was just weird talking to this FBI guy, knowing all that history.
Sorry? Who gave you my number? I really don't know offhand who that was. Okay, well, when you figure it out, beat me. I'll call you back and we'll talk. Okay.
We went back to tell Valletta about the conversation.
My son was just a little upcoming rapper in California for an award. FBI was following him. Were they following him here in New York City, up there in California, everywhere he was going? Why? I would like to know why. Miss Wallace would like to know why.
Valletta's now, you know, started a lawsuit against the LAPD for wrongful death, you know, which alleges a number of the things, you know, a number of which are in the film. But, you know, she's determined to get to the bottom of the case and determined to find out, you know, why the police, you know, have sat on evidence, why they haven't interviewed certain people, why this case has been allowed to remain unresolved for years and years and years. And one very much doubts whether this would have happened if it hadn't been, black rap artists who had been shot.
It's not just with rappers, you know what I'm saying? People want to attack anybody that's a large figure, you know what I'm saying? They did it to Jordan, they did it to Tyson, they did it to Bill Cosby, you know what I'm saying? Right. They're going to attack you if you're on top, you know what I'm saying? It's just your job to bob and weave, you know what I'm saying?
We applied to Suge Knight's prison to get permission to film. In the meantime, Valletta put us in touch with Biggie's bodyguard. Valletta said he had a strange encounter when he was standing with Puffy just before Biggie got shot. Gene, the bodyguard, lives here in Upper Manhattan. I heard he was at least 6'7".
Like that, you gotta be somebody that's scared. You was knocking like you was scared, man. Scared. Yeah.
Gene Deal was actually quite reluctant to meet with us, and I think he'd just done it because he, really loved Valletta Wallace, Biggie's mom, and wanted to do it sort of for her to help. But initially, he wanted us to put it like to actually blot his face out, that we were going to do a silhouette against a window or something. He didn't want his face shown. And, I kind of refused to do that. And I said it would be more dramatic if we filmed him in a mask, like a ski mask or something. And he said, I'm not going to do it in a ski mask. So it got off to a really bad beginning, actually, the interview. And then he was wondering what to do, and I remember he leant against the gas stove, which was in the kitchen, and the gas stove ignited and actually burnt him on his bum. And I didn't know if he was just going to chuck us out then, but somehow, I said, look, this is obviously an omen that we should get on with the interview, and he kind of laughed, and then Gene decided to do the interview. But it was really, really sort of touch and go. And of course, it was like one of the most important interviews in the film, really. It was, it was we really learned a big leap forward for the case. And, yeah, he had a lot to say, and he had never really been interviewed before. So I think there was a lot he wanted to say that he'd been keeping to himself for a long, long time. He did a couple of interviews after he did this one, but again, he was always in silhouette. So I think we were just really lucky that we got this.
This is the individual
That one.
This one right here.
That one.
Yeah, that's the one Lucy's did for the police. That's him right there.
That's him.
Yeah.
That's him.
That's the guy that came up to me.
That guy.
Wait, do it again.
That guy right there.
That's him.
Yeah.
Will you ever show his picture?
So this was a really incredible moment, and it was actually Michel DaCosta's idea that we show him the lineup of photographs. Because we had all these lineups of what the police had shown people and stuff. And it was just amazing to me that they never shown Gene Deal, who was a main witness, really, or one of the main witnesses. They'd never shown him this particular lineup. And I would imagine, that's one of the things Valletta will use in her law suit against the LAPD, which is, why wasn't this guy shown that lineup before? Why? And why was Harry Billups, who he identified, never interviewed in terms of, being there at the time of the shooting? The LAPD to this day have never interviewed that guy.
I had him to a T before P called me that morning. He said, a guy in the Nation of Islam shot Big. And I said, yo, dog, he had the blue suit, blue bow tie, white shirt, peanut head, receding hairline, brown skin. He was like, yeah, dog, how you know? I said, a nigga came up to me first
I said, he came to us first. He walked up the Puff van. And I got him off. And he was like, get the fuck out of here. I was like, yeah, straight up, for real. He came up there first.
It's amazing the police never showed you that still picture before.
Can't recall him. Nope.
They never showed it to you before.
They showed me a lot of other shit. You know what I'm saying?
But they absolutely never showed you that picture.
I can't recall them showing me that picture.
Hi, Russell. We went to play Gene's interview to Russell.
Hi. We got this big tape recorder. Who have we got on today?
Stevie Nicks.
Oh, I'm pleased we got you in your shorts finally. Good.
This guy had a stronger cheekbone structure, whereas he looked a little sterner look.
You know, one of the things I think also it's important when you're like doing interviews and stuff is that you don't really lead much on the interviews, or that, you know, once someone starts talking, that you often just, I mean, what I tend to do is just repeat their last word or their last 3 words or whatever, particularly if you want them to go into it deeper. And people will normally just like follow on that thought, you know. I always think if you like interject with a whole new thought that's got no relationship to what they've been talking about, it kind of really knocks all the tension and build up that you've been building up to in an interview out of it. So I always just try and build on what someone's been saying. And sometimes if you just repeat the last word that they've said, you know, whatever it is, that will just focus them back on where they were on a particular point, and they go into it even deeper. So it's not, you know, that's about the sum total of my interview technique, but it sort of works, I think.
These types of statements made by witnesses need to be thoroughly followed up on. And I honestly believe that the players that we're talking about, David Mack and Amir Muhammad, are somehow involved in this case. And the department, time and time again, has avoided the truth. And when you add everything up, what other reason could there be? The reason being is because they do not want to expose to the public that Los Angeles police officers were involved in the conspiracy to kill Biggie Smalls.
The most amazing thing in this whole story is that Officer David Mack and Officer Rafael Perez have never been questioned in connection with the Biggie Smalls murder. Neither has Harry Billups, aka Ammar Mohammed, who we tried to contact through his lawyer. If nothing else, their names should be cleared. The question now is, with Tupac and Biggie dead, will the killing machine carry on? There was a news report that Suge Knight had threatened Snoop Dogg, seen here together in Happier Days. Snoop apparently is now frightened for his life. We wondered if this document had anything to do with it. After a concert at Universal Studios, Snoop Dogg was attacked, kicked and punched by people working for Death Row. When asked by one of the deputies if he knew who had killed Tupac Shakur...
We tried, you know, a lot to try and get hold of Snoop. You know, I think he was... You know, we knew various people who were very close to him and stuff, but, you know, people were very reluctant to talk about this kind of stuff. You know, I think people, you know, have been very frightened of Suge Knight and Death Row, and a lot of people attached to the case, you know, who were there at the night of the shooting, for example, you know, with Tupac, or, you know, who were present in the casino, they're all dead now. You know, a lot of, someone was just killed like a month ago, and 5 or 6 other people are being killed too. So people are just, you know, weary about taking part in films and conversations and stuff. Although, you know, I hope that people will feel more like taking part simply because it's more open now, and there is the lawsuit of Valetta Wallace's, which I think, you know, people should support and try and help with. And I know that there were a lot of people who were around, you know, with both the murders, who, you know, were aware of what went on. And so there are obviously a lot of people out there who know who's responsible. So one hopes that this film and Russell Sullivan's book called, Labyrinth, and, Russell Poole's work and the Letters lawsuit will all effectively have the effect of bringing out some more evidence so that, the people who are responsible will actually be finally brought to justice, and I think that's a really important thing for, Valletta, just to have some closure to the whole thing.
Any guys that's I can probably even say any guys that's black in the prison won't be speaking to you.
Why, really?
I guarantee you that.
This is Reggie Jr., who we were negotiating with to try and get the interview with Suge Knight, and the negotiations with Death Row were really difficult, and they wanted to have their representative with us, and then they wanted to be able to control the questions, and then they wanted to be able to take the footage, after the interview and all the rest of it. I couldn't agree to any of those things, really. So, then they said we, couldn't do the interview. But there was this sort of weird sort of loophole with this particular prison in California, which is Mule Creek State Prison, which is that you can get a general permission to film at the prison, providing the prisoners agree to being interviewed. So we just went up there anyway. You didn't need a specific prisoner to get an interview. You were like filming the institution. So we went up there anyway, and we were just wandering around here in the prison yard, like hoping Suge Knight might be there. And it was a really weird feeling, because I always knew that the film was sort of effectively finished with an interview with Suge Knight, and this was it, So I was sort of really relieved that the film might be coming to an end, because we'd been filming for like 14 weeks and we were completely exhausted. And at the same time, we didn't know where Suge Knight was, and we'd heard that he'd broken his foot or hurt his foot playing basketball. So we were it was like a very strange experience being there, and it was sort of ostensibly very relaxed, Californian sun, and it's in a beautiful part of California, this prison, in the sort of gold rush country, where, near Eureka and stuff. But then if you look a little closer, you'll notice that there's complete racial groupings here. It's like, whites in one area. This was the Indian Sweat Lodge playing. And so there is, a tension. And, like there's a white area, black area, Chicano area. And, it's pretty strange.
Suggested we try Suge Knight's cell block 15.
Strange being there. This is like, it's only the guards on the top who have the guns, so no one on the floor is armed, I guess, in case they get hold of your weapon. And there are all these weird signs like this one, no warning shot is required, and so on. And there was another one outside saying, any inmate seen making towards an aircraft that has landed will be shot immediately. And this was the first time we saw Suge Knight. It was incredible. He just sort of came around the corner, and there he was doing Death Row business on the telephone. And then the question was, approaching him and seeing if he'd actually do an interview, even though we're being told he wouldn't. And I just remember feeling sort of panicked that he wouldn't do the interview more than anything else, because it was more like I just wanted to try and finish the film.
Wait till he gets off. I'll go ask him.
All right. I guess he's hurt his leg.
Yeah, that's from his foot.
What?
It's always amazing though when you're making these films and you suddenly meet someone that you've been like kind of doing a film about for months and months and months, and you haven't met them, And then you suddenly have this moment where you meet them, and you kind of know all these things about them, and you've read all these things about them, and then you finally actually, see them. And the thing is to not have to try and lose any preconceptions that you might have, to just so that the occasion is a spontaneous occasion, and it's really reflective of that moment, not reflective of all the other things that you've known before. That's kind of almost the hardest thing to do.
You running? I don't know what the warden said, but Suge Knight agreed to do a short interview.
Funnily enough, I don't know how it transpired this way, but we actually are interviewing Suge Knight on a table that's normally reserved for the white inmates. Maybe it's because we were like mainly a white film crew, I don't know, but he was very reluctant to do the interview at first, and he looked incredibly nervous about suddenly seeing us there, and what were we doing there, and were we there to trap him in some way. That was almost sort of how it was. So it was and the camera person, hadn't really filmed in a prison before. There's a lot of tension there where I was unsure about what he was shooting, and it was just a very tense. It was a very tense moment, really.
Well, I said, I gathered that you didn't really want to talk very much about Tupac. I agreed to no slander and funny stuff, and to ask Suge Knight about his message to the kids. And so, what is the special message you would like to send to the kids?
Suge Knight had said the only thing he wanted to talk about was to send a special message to the kids. He didn't want to get into a conversation about Tupac, and he didn't want to get into any negative things. And I agreed to that and said that I would ask him this question, his special message to the kids. I never imagined that necessarily anything at all interesting or revealing would come out, but it was, one of the first interviews that, it was the only filmed interview he'd done in Mule Creek at this point. And I decided just to leave this part of the interview one long take, because I thought it was just so incredible the way he, changes in mid-thought from his special message to the kid and gets into this whole other side, which I think is, the really revealing side of him and how he thinks and kind of who he is.
They have high-powered lawyers. 9 out of 10, they would never ever, come to the penitentiary. But the guys in the inner city, if they get in trouble, they have what we call a public tender, a public offender, which is they're not gonna have the best.
And they go to prison.
And they go to prison for a long time.
So they should model themselves on rap stars with big lawyers.
No, they shouldn't. And besides that, you have certain individuals who's artists, and they might get in trouble. They might do a few things, but they well-known names, and they inform it for the police.
It's funny, I still actually get itchy feet whenever I watch this interview. I always feel like, leaving or going and doing something else rather than watching it. It was sort of slightly agonizing experience doing this particular thing.
And you think about it, you see that, you watch the news, you follow the people's trials, people's court cases, or you follow what you hear.
And when you're doing all these interviews, you always think, should I be, all these thoughts are racing through your head. So the hardest thing is not to ask lots of questions, like, should I ask him about the bullet that's supposed to be in his head? Should I ask him about this, that, and the other? And then afterwards, you kind of give yourself a really hard time and think, I should have asked this, I should have asked that. In fact, in this interview, I only asked one question, which was, his special message to the kids. And it was sort of a gamble that it would actually pay off.
Stab somebody, do those type of crimes, they're not gonna come to prison. One of the reasons they're not gonna come
like
to
Snoop?
Well, Snoop would never come. I mean, Snoop was on, you know, we beat a murder trial for him, but then he was on probation. Then he got caught with 2 ounces of marijuana. Then he got caught with guns. And each time it's nothing. They're not gonna violate him. Because for the street guys know what I'm talking about. There's no puzzle. I mean, if you get a guy that constantly getting in trouble and never gonna come to prison, that's because he's an informant. He's a rat, a snitch, you know. And they're more important to the police on the streets than in here, because they let them know what's going on. They might save their soul by telling on 3 or 4 or 5 other guys. You know, I'm from Compton, and a rat is the lowest you can go. A rat will do anything.
But you don't think Snoop was a rat?
I mean, I don't want to make Alice, I don't need to put nobody out there. 'Cause if I do, that's like a form of telling. But for the street guys out there, they know. They know this guy never come to prison. They know the only way to stay out of prison is one way. And you look at it, I got 9 years. The judge said he watched the tape 25 times. He couldn't tell if I kicked or just broke it up. The victim said I didn't do nothing, but I still got 9 years. I know I was gonna have to pay a debt to society before it's coming to prison, because if you come from the inner city, you come from the ghetto, and you active off that block, you'll come to prison sooner or later. If you don't come to prison, there's only a few things, you know, you gotta be working with the police.
Suge Knight is leaving prison in 1 month's time. He denies any involvement in the murders.
This was one of the few sequences we actually used a DV camera for in the film. Because I didn't use the Joan Churchill who was shooting the rest of it, and we thought it'd be probably easy just to have DV camera in the prison than the film camera was so heavy. But it does look slightly flatter.
Logged onto the Death Row website, expecting to find a message to the kids. Instead, it was for Snoop Dogg from Suge Knight.
Give me a hug, you know. It's nice to see
We introduced Valletta and Russell, who'd never met before.
Because I came out into the press after I retired.
Russell is helping Valletta with a massive lawsuit she's bringing against the LAPD for her son's wrongful death. It's expected to be one of the biggest lawsuits against the police department of recent memory. Valletta thinks the tragedy of Biggie and Tupac's friendship was that it was destroyed by outside forces. She's determined to find her son's killer. Valletta is someone we all particularly admired and cared for. She's shown such amazing courage in this whole story.
It smells fantastic.
Oh, I'm making you some delicious Valletta's appetizer. Oh, I did this. This was in the newspaper.
Smells so incredible.
This was in one of the hip-hop magazines.
Was it?
Yeah, but instead of chicken soup, I hope you guys like red meat.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is beef. It's like a T-bone steak I cut into little shreds and make my homemade soup. My son usually loves.
So I particularly hope too that the film will help the Christopher Wallace Foundation and help contribute to things that Valletta's trying to do in the schools and stuff. And I just thought, what's so incredible about Valletta is the way, she's looking to the future to do stuff.
1 o'clock in the daytime, and I was mad at him. And I think I yelled at him, and he said, "You owe me an apology." I said, "Hell no, I'm not going to apologize to you." And my mom was just, "Mom."
We filmed this actually right at the end of the film. It was like our sort of farewell lunch with Valletta that she had been promising to cook us, and after we'd finished, we just we always had our equipment anyway, and we just sort of filmed this right at the end of it. So it was very spontaneous the way it happened.
Nothing. Hello? Hello? What are you doing on my phone? I said. I told you I wasn't gonna hang up this phone. said, were you on this phone? Yes, I was. And I looked, said, no, this jackass was not on this phone all this. I said, no, I need to make a telephone. Not until you say you're sorry and say you love me. You know, but you have to say it. Okay, Christopher, I love you. Isn't that easy? You let me sit here, fall asleep, wake up, and all you had to do was to tell me you love me, and this would not have happened. Okay, Christopher, get off the phone. That's when you got off the phone. From like 12:30 to about 3:30, he was on that phone. I could not believe it. So I told you I was not gonna get off this phone until you do. See, that's the relationship we have. That's the beautiful relationship we have.
Going out to all the young niggas that died in struggle.
And it was Valletta's idea that we have this song at the end of the film.
Sparking blunts for all you niggas. Word up.
Daydreams of how we used to be. And that baby's looking just like you. But you got away. I've been missing you lately. Tell me what you're going through.
I remember selling 3 bricks of straight flour. Got my man a beat down to the 3rd power. He didn't care, spent the money in a half hour. Got some fish scale, rained on competition like a shower. Got the coke cooked up, a crackhead Kevin. In 88, when Kane ruled with half-stepping. A 38, a lot of mouth was our only weapon. We was kings till the D's crept in, and now I'm missing them. Weekends we play the movies. We rock flat tops, our girls rock doobies. Made a killing, even though the D's knew me. Eventually, you know they tried to do me. Fuck it, fed up, my nigga wanted to take it down south. Sick of cops coming, sick of throwing jacks in his mouth. Gave him half my paper, told him go that route. A few months he got his brains blown out. Now I'm stressed, his baby mother, she tripping, blaming me and his older brothers. Understand the game it be kinda topsy-turvy. You win some, you lose some. Damn, they lost a brother, their mother lost a son. Fuck, why my nigga couldn't stay in NY? I'm a thug, but I swear for 3 days I cried. I look in the sky and ask God why. Can't look his baby girls in the eye. Damn, I'm listening.